Hello everyone, this is Nathanael Rutherford with Vol Basketball Fever here for another Vols basketball breakdown. For the weekend coming up, Tennessee has a big game on tap. It's the weekend, everyone always circles on the calendar. It's Tennessee versus Kentucky, the Vols versus the Wildcats. This time in Rupp Arena, the two will meet in Thompson-Boling Arena in Knoxville later this season. It's actually a Kentucky weekend overall for Tennessee because the Vols and Lady Vols both play Kentucky this weekend. But thank you all so much for tuning in to this matchup breakdown. Like this video if you haven't already. Share this video with a friend, a Vol fan, maybe even a Kentucky fan if you know a few of them. And let us know what you think about this video and about this game coming up this weekend. So comment down below. We're going to tweet at us. We're at Vol Hoops Fever on Twitter as well. Hit the notification button so you guys always know when we put out new videos. We have videos like this before every big SEC game for Tennessee. Men's basketball. We also have video podcasts of our show, the Vol Basketball Fever and Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. Well, guys, again, this is a big weekend. Tennessee coming off a win against South Carolina to get back into the win column. Kentucky coming off a win against Vanderbilt. Both these teams have a lot of advantages, and there's a few disadvantages too. I'll cover here in just a second. But this game is being played in Rupp Arena in Lexington, and that's normally been a house of horrors for Tennessee. The Vols have not had a lot of success there at all. Kentucky is 91-19 all time against Tennessee in Lexington. And currently this Kentucky team, I guess dating back to last year too, they've won 12 straight games at home. So 12 straight wins for Kentucky in Rupp Arena. Tennessee only 19 wins all time in Lexington. Kentucky's been very inconsistent and not great away from home, but they've been very solid and stellar at home, and not just against the cupcake teams in non-conference play, but also in SEC play. They're averaging 87.5 points per game at home against SEC teams, while only allowing 66.5 points per game against SEC teams at home. So that's a huge margin there. It's a 20-point victory, a 21-point victory, basically, for both home games they've had in Lexington and Rupp Arena. But the Vols actually have had success more recently in Rupp Arena. Tennessee has actually won 2 straight games in Rupp Arena, which is, I don't think has ever happened before. I had to go back and check. I can't remember the dates now, back in the 70s when Tennessee won there, or 80s, whatever it was, but it's not happened very often. In fact, they have won 3 of the last 4 games on the road against Kentucky. So Tennessee is 3-1 in the last 4 games in Rupp Arena. And half of UT's all-time wins in Rupp Arena have come under Rick Barnes. So Rick Barnes has 3 of the 6 wins that Tennessee's ever had in Rupp Arena, period, and have come the past, 5-6 years at this point. So Tennessee's had more success there in the past half decade than they have probably ever had in the school's history. So maybe Tennessee can keep that going this weekend. It's going to be tough, though, because Oscar Tshiebwe for Kentucky is going to be a problem. You've probably heard about him before. He's probably the lead runner for the SEC Player of the Year currently. The 6'9", 260-pound transfer from West Virginia. Probably the most prolific rebounder in SEC basketball that I've ever personally have watched and watched his game and stuff. I can't speak to things back in the 80s and 70s, but from what I've seen, from what I've watched, the best rebounders, pure rebounder, and really just offensive talent in the post that I've ever seen in the SEC in college basketball. He leads Kentucky in scoring at 17 points per game overall and 20 points per game overall in SEC play. So he's even gotten even better in SEC play when it comes to scoring. He's averaging 15.1 rebounds a game, and that's almost 16 per game in SEC play. Dude has had 20 or more rebounds 4 times this season, and that includes grabbing 20 rebounds once against SEC school against Missouri. And he also did it against Duke. So he did it against 2 high major programs. He didn't just have that 28 rebound game against, Western Kentucky or whoever it was he did it against. But he's had 20 rebound games against 2 high major opponents as well. He's totaled 13 double-doubles on the season and has scored at least 15 points in 9 games this year. He scored in double figures in all but 2 games he's played this season, and he's shooting 53.6% in SEC play, which is second on the team for Kentucky behind only at Keon Brooks, who's making 58.6%. Oscar Tshiebwe is the real deal. He hasn't just racked up a bunch of points and rebounds in non-conference play against some weaker opponents. He's doing this in SEC play too. And granted, Kentucky still hasn't played the most, the toughest start to SEC play, but they still haven't, it's never easy in the SEC. but Sheway has made it look easy at times. You would think that getting Sheway in foul trouble would be a key to beating Kentucky this year. Actually, he's yet to foul out this season, and Kentucky's actually undefeated even in games where he's had 4 fouls. So even getting him in foul trouble doesn't guarantee you a victory, because in fact, when he's gotten in foul trouble, he's had 4 fouls in a game, or finished the game with 4 fouls. Kentucky still hasn't lost. In fact, Kentucky just as a team doesn't foul much this season, period. Averaging just 13.5 fouls a game, and that ups a little bit to 14.5 in SEC play. But both of those are at the bottom of college basketball and at the bottom of SEC play. Teams are only getting to the free throw line against Kentucky an average of 13 times a game. In SEC play, that's 14. So I think it's like right down the bottom again in college basketball and in SEC play. But when teams do get to the free throw line against the Wildcats, that's kind of when Kentucky struggled more. So if you can get them in foul trouble or get them to commit fouls and draw fouls on them, they've struggled a little bit more with that. Kentucky is 4-2 when an opponent attempts 15 or more free throws in a game against them, but they're 9-1 when a team attempts less than 15. So if you get to 15 or more, Kentucky's had a much tougher time winning games, but they're 9-1 if you don't get to the line at least 15 times. That's not great news for Tennessee, because the Vols have only attempted 15 or more free throws in a game 7 times this year, and they're actually only 4-3 in those games. So getting to the line hasn't been a guarantee for Tennessee to win games, because they've struggled so much to shoot them this year. When they've done a better job of getting to the line, Tennessee has had struggles to even make the free throws. Look at the South Carolina game. Look at what they've done really in all of SEC play this season so far. I don't know, as of recording this, the true status of point guard Severe Wheeler. He's missed the last few games for Kentucky. There's a chance he plays on Saturday, and even if he doesn't, though, Kentucky's been fine with Ty Washington running the point. But Severe Wheeler has been a huge addition to Kentucky, one of the millions of transfers from Georgia. He's been a stellar point guard for them, and he's a huge reason why Kentucky has a great assist to turnover ratio this year. He's averaging 9.6 points per game and 7.3 assists per game and just under 3 turnovers per game. So his assist to turnover ratio is almost I can't do the math on my head really quickly, but it's very good. It's over a 2-to-1 at this point, and kind of creeping up a little bit on that 3-to-1 ratio. Even with Wheeler out, like I said, Kentucky hasn't really missed a beat with freshman Ty Washington at point guard. He's averaging 13.7 points and just under 5 assists per game, but has upped that assist total to almost 7 assists per game in SEC play. So his assist total in SEC play is just about where Severe Wheeler's was. So again, not really missed a beat with Severe Wheeler out, and he's still scoring about 13 points a game. He's also rebounding 5.5 rebounds a game. So Ty Washington can do a little bit of everything for Kentucky. Kentucky has one of the highest assist totals in college basketball, averaging 17.4 per game. That's 15.3 per game in SEC play. They have the 12th best assist to turnover ratio in the entire country, and Tennessee's are right behind them at 16th. There's like a very small percentage difference between the two, but both these teams are the top 20 in the country in assist to turnover ratio. You may have gotten the hint here, but there isn't really a whole lot that Kentucky does poorly. They have a really highly ranked offense and a really highly ranked defense. They currently rank 8th on KenPom in offensive efficiency and 21st in defensive efficiency. In terms of those rankings, there's only really 2 other opponents Tennessee's played this year that are kind of comparable, and that kind of both being in the top 25 in the efficiency rankings. That's Villanova, who is 7th on offense and is 15th on defense, and Arizona, who is 12th on offense and 16th on defense. Of course, Tennessee split those 2 games. But one of those is at home and one of those is a neutral site, and this one's obviously on the road for Tennessee. In SEC play, Kentucky ranks in the top 5 in the conference in a multitude of categories on both sides of the ball. They have made the 2nd most field goals. They have the 4th best field goal percentage, 5th best three-point percentage, number 1 in rebounding, and they're 4th in points per game. On defense, they're 3rd in field goal defense, 2nd in 2-point percentage field goal defense, first in terms of least amount of rebounds given up, and they're 3rd in scoring defense. So they just do a lot really well, and they're just a really tough team to try scheming against because of a lot of different reasons. For one, they have a really elite post player, but they can also beat you from deep thanks to that elite post presence that they have. Kellen Grady is making 45.4% of his threes this season. You heard that right. Almost half of his threes this season, Kellen Grady is connecting on. And Ty Washington is making 40.4, with Davion Mintz hitting 36.8. In SEC play, Davion Mintz has been incredible. He is hitting 50% of his threes in SEC play. He's exactly 50% from in distance in SEC play, while Washington has been 40% from distance. And though they're really good at hitting threes, they have a high efficiency at shooting threes, only 23.6% of Kentucky's points this season have come from the three, which ranks 339th in the country. You know where Tennessee ranks? 76th, with 35.6% of their threes. So a whole 12 percentage points difference in terms of where these offenses get their production from three. Kentucky doesn't attempt a ton of threes. They're good at hitting them. They just don't attempt 30 per game that Tennessee almost does. And Tennessee has a much larger percentage of their points coming from the three. If Kentucky beats Tennessee, it would be easily their best win on their resume so far. Kentucky did beat North Carolina on neutral court, just like Tennessee did, and they crushed North Carolina. It was 98-69 was the final score in that one. But currently, UNC ranks 29th on KenPom and 32 in the early net rankings, which if you don't know what those are, I might try to do a video that kind of breaks down what the net rankings are. But it's essentially the tool that the NCAA uses to measure the quality of opponents. Think like RPI, but more accurate, I guess, and more of a qualitative type thing. I think maybe maybe it could be quantitative. I don't remember the true definition of what net is. But it's essentially like RPI, but with a more, I guess, nuanced approach to the rankings. Tennessee, meanwhile, ranks 13th on KenPom, so that's 16 points higher than where UNC is, and 10th in the net. So they're top 10 team in the net rankings. Kentucky's just 1-3 in quad one games, which quad one games, if I remember correctly, are facing teams 1 through 25 in the net rankings at home, 1 through 50 in neutral site, and 1 through 75 on the road. So this would be a quad one game for Kentucky. They're just 1-3 in quad one games. Tennessee is 2-4 in such games, and this will be a quad one game for them too. Kentucky hasn't really played a murderer's row coming into this game. Their adjusted strength of schedule on KenPom ranks 266th in the country, and their non-conference strength of schedule is 315th. So they've faced a couple good teams. They haven't got really good wins on the resume. Again, they've lost to Duke, they lost to LSU. So they lost to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is not great either. But they've played some decent teams, but their only good quality win is against North Carolina. That one kind of keeps slipping down a little bit as North Carolina keeps losing and not playing great here as the season goes on. Finally, kind of the main last big point about Kentucky before I kind of get to some positives for Tennessee is that Kentucky really likes to pull away in the second half in games this year. They have the second best second half margin in college basketball, outscoring their opponents an average of 11.3 points per game in the second half. Tennessee's already faced the number one team in that regard. Now it's Arizona. Arizona had I think it's 13 something points per game in the second half. The margin for them. So Tennessee's faced that one. Arizona did beat them. Arizona did outscore Tennessee in the second half of that game, if you remember. But now they're going to face Kentucky. So getting out to an early lead, having a lead at halftime, or just playing well early on is going to be key for Tennessee. Tennessee hasn't had a lot of games where they've started out great. So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. Kentucky averages 43.4 points per game in the second half this season, which is the 8th most in the country. Tennessee, meanwhile, ranks 66th in second half points per game with 39.3, and they're 9th in the second half margin, however, with 7.7 a game. So again, that just really stresses the importance of Tennessee needs to have a good first half. Would love to have the lead going into halftime because Kentucky has been a very strong second half team, and Tennessee generally hasn't been as strong in the second half as they have the first, or at least not as strong as their opponents. Over to Tennessee now to kind of talk some positives for them. Kind of touched on it earlier, but Rick Barnes has had an unusual amount of success against Kentucky, not just at Rupp Arena, but in general for a Tennessee head coach. He actually has a winning record against the Wildcats. He's 8-6. And Tennessee's won 6 of the last 10 against Kentucky under Rick Barnes. And again, mentioned earlier, he has half of Tennessee's all-time wins in Rupp Arena. So it kind of speaks a little bit more to how much Tennessee has struggled in Rupp Arena. I guess maybe more so than even what Rick Barnes has done. But still, Tennessee is 8-6 under Rick Barnes against Kentucky, which I couldn't tell you the last time Tennessee had a head coach who had a winning record against the Wildcats, so that's impressive. Another thing that I think is interesting to watch about, we kind of talked about it in the Vol Basketball Fever podcast that came out earlier this week, Tennessee has never lost to Kentucky when Josiah Jordan-James has been on the court. In fact, not only are they undefeated with him on the court, Josiah's never lost in Rupp Arena against the Cats. He is 2-0 against the Wildcats in his career at Tennessee, and both those games have come in Rupp. He's also had some of his best games of his career against Kentucky. He totaled 16 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals on 3 of 5 shooting in Tennessee's 2020 win against Kentucky and Rupp. And then he got a double-double with 10 points and 10 boards on 4 of 10 shooting in the Vols' 2021 win in Rupp. He's missed both games in Thompson-Boling because of I think, injury or illness, or maybe both. I think injury probably. So he's not played them actually in Knoxville, but he's 2-0 against Kentucky in his career at Tennessee. And again, he's had 2 of his really most impressive games of his career against Kentucky. And looks like he may have finally, hopefully, turned a corner this season. He's coming off a double-double against South Carolina with 11 points and 12 rebounds. But he's also had this weird thing for the last month where he'll have a game where he scores in double figures and he scores 3 or 4 points. Double figures, 3 or 4 points. Double figures, 3 or 4 points. He's done it for like 6 or 7 straight games now, where he's had double figures, and then immediately next game he scores and like literally 3 or 4 points. So if you're judging by that, he might be due for a bad game, but he's also, again, had really good games against Kentucky, so we'll see. If the Vols want to win this game, the key just might be hitting their threes, which might concern you a little bit. But Kentucky is allowing the most made threes per game in SEC play so far this year. They're allowing teams to shoot 35.8% from 3, and they're giving up 8.5 made threes per game. They have the 3rd worst 3-point defense in SEC play currently. And all but one team, SEC team that Kentucky has faced, Missouri, which doesn't surprise me, has made at least 39% of their threes against Kentucky. I think Missouri had like 20-something percent, so it was like a really low number. But every other team they've played has hit at least 39% of their threes when they play Kentucky. Unfortunately for Tennessee, 3-point shooting has been abysmal as of late. They've only made 27.8% of their threes in SEC play. And it's even further exacerbated when you look at their 3-point shooting percentage in true road games, where they've made just 24.7% of their threes this season. So, again, it's usually good when a team hits a bunch of threes against Kentucky, gives them a chance to win. Tennessee's had a lot of issues with that this year, though, of being a consistently good 3-point shooting team, especially when they've not had a post presence to kind of play inside out. In this game, they're going to really struggle to have a post presence, I think. Also, I think 65 points could be the magic number in this game. Kentucky is 3-3 this season when an opponent scores 65 or more points, but they are undefeated if they hold a team to 64 points or fewer. The Vols have scored 66 points in all but 2 games this season, and those 2 games were both ugly losses, once to Villanova and to Texas Tech earlier in the season. So UT is 11-2 when scoring 66 or more points, and a perfect 9-0 when scoring at least 69 points in a game. That's very nice. And though, unfortunately for Tennessee, Kentucky's only allowed 69 or more points in 3 games this season. And Kentucky scored 90-plus points in 2 of those 3 games. The only other one was the Duke game that they lost. The other 2 were games where they blew out the other opponent. North Carolina and I want to say it was Georgia maybe. It was an SEC team. They allowed the scores in the 70s, but they again scored 90 points in that game. So Tennessee, again, undefeated when they scored at least 69 points, but Kentucky's only allowed that total 3 times this year. But still, that's a thing to shoot for. 65 points, and then if you get close to 70, even better for Tennessee. Kentucky doesn't really force many turnovers, and that could really play into Tennessee's hand because they also don't turn the ball over a ton. And on the flip side, Tennessee does force a ton of turnovers, even though Kentucky doesn't really turn it over a lot. Tennessee's been able to force turnovers really just very consistently against every team they've played this season. Kentucky only forces 12.6 turnovers per game on the year, and their 12.5 turnovers forced per game in SEC play ranks 12th in the conference. But UT only turns the ball over 12 times per game on average, though that has come up a little bit. That's 15 per game in SEC play, still kind of middle of the SEC in that regard. But when the Vols turn the ball over 13 times or less in a game, which is right around where UK is averaging, Tennessee is 10-2 on the year. So they're 10-2 when they have 13 or fewer turnovers, and that's right around what the average of what Kentucky is forcing this season for their opponents. That bodes really well for Tennessee. Conversely, UT forces a ton of turnovers on defense, averaging 18.4 per game and 20.3 per game in SEC play, which is number 1 in conference. Like they're forcing the most turnovers per game in conference play this year. Kentucky only averages 10.5 turnovers a game in SEC play, which is the second fewest, But 2 of their 3 losses have come when they've turned the ball over 13 or more times. So like I said, the scoring points was the magic number is 65. The scoring, or this one, the magic number might be 13 in this case for turnovers in this game for, I guess, kind of both ends of the court. And kind of finally here, the 2 most comparable defenses that Kentucky's faced in terms of where Tennessee's ranks this season are Duke and LSU. Tennessee currently ranks 2nd on Ken Palm in defensive efficiency. LSU, of course, ranks number 1, and Duke ranks 17th. Kentucky lost both of those games, though neither were in Rupp, very notably. They both were away from Rupp Arena. And they've scored just an average of 65.5 points per game in those games when they faced those elite defenses. Kentucky only shot a combined 37% from the floor in those 2 games as well. But when Tennessee's faced top 15 offenses, which is where Kentucky's is, they're at number 8, right? Like I said on Ken Palm, they've struggled too. So they've faced Villanova, who's 7th, Alabama, who's 9th, Arizona, who's 14th, and North Carolina, who's 15th. So kind of all those are in the kind of the same range as Kentucky's. And Tennessee allowed at least 70 points in all 4 of those games, and giving an average of 72.3 points per game in those 4 games. So, and of course, Tennessee lost to Villanova, lost to Bama, did beat Arizona, did beat North Carolina. But that's also a concern, is when Tennessee's faced elite offenses, they've given up 70 or more points, and Tennessee's offense has struggled to score 70 or more points against some really good defenses when they've played this year too. So all in all, this is going to be I hesitate to say exciting, because I don't know. I think it could be a somewhat defensive struggle in this game. But I think the matchups are interesting. If Tennessee can get Oscar Tshiebwe in foul trouble, I mean, again, it hasn't proven that Kentucky will lose when it happens, but I think that bodes well for Tennessee with the kind of offense and the kind of roster Tennessee has. So this game is going to be all about turnovers. Again, I feel like I've said that every matchup breakdown for this series so far. But if Severe Wheeler doesn't play, that's good news for Tennessee. But even if he doesn't, Tate Washington, again, has been really, really solid for Kentucky at point guard without Wheeler there. It's going to be a tough game. And you're playing in Rupp, where, again, Tennessee's had an unusual amount of success the past 4 or 5 years, but still, it's Rupp. It's not a place Tennessee's had a lot of success historically, and it's not going to be a COVID-shortened number of fans this year. You're going to have a packed house, I would imagine, for the 1 o'clock tip-off on Saturday. It's going to be a fun one. It's Tennessee, Kentucky. I want this game more than I want any other one on the regular season schedule for Tennessee every year, except maybe Memphis, but of course this year we didn't play Memphis because of reasons. But I'm excited for it. Tennessee can win. I don't know that I would pick them to win, but there are things that Tennessee can do to win this game that I don't think it's out of the question. I have a better feeling about this one than I do the LSU game, for example. But I still don't have like an amazing feeling about it, if I had to be honest. But Tennessee can win. Kentucky can win. It's going to be, I don't think a toss-up, but I don't think the line's going to be outrageous for this game. What are your thoughts on this, though? What do you think Tennessee has to do to win? How confident do you feel about Tennessee winning this game? Let me know in the comments below, or again on Twitter at VolHoopsFever on Twitter, or if you want to at me, I'm at Mr_Rutherford. But we'll go ahead and sign off here. We'll see you guys on Saturday during the game. And this has been a Vol Basketball Fever matchup breakdown for Tennessee.